My name is Percy Perkins, and I'm a con man. Not a very good con man, mind you, but a con man nonetheless. And this is the story of my only successful, if you could call it that, venture into the world of conning. Now, I'm not the only con man to think of using religion as a way to get people to give me money, but the way in which I did it, if I do say so myself, was quite brilliant and quite unique. It all began when I set out to start a church called the Percy Perkins Penitence Episcopalian. Quite catchy, but it ended up being too much of a mouthful, so I just called it Penitence Episcopalian. The premise was simple. I thought that knowing people and the true nature of people as I do, getting people to do acts of good would be motivated much more by putting your name on a scoreboard and keeping score, rather than trying to earn the favor of some all-powerful being up in the sky. Oh, and I was right. People like to keep score. People like to know that they are doing good, and they like others to know that they are doing good. And it was a perfect place to start. Now, how would I make money from this? Well, I had a list of ways you could earn what I was calling penitence points, as you might have picked up. And at the top of this list were things such as donating half of your monthly income to the church. Or me. Now, I'm a con man, so I have a bit of charisma, give me some credit here. And I was able to assemble a small following who were interested in the idea. They liked the idea of keeping score, and they wanted to turn their lives around and really thought this would be the motivation they needed to get going. And they did give me money. At first, my concerns were I just wanted to pay rent, but it quickly scaled up beyond anything I could have imagined. At first it was 5 people, then 10. And suddenly I was making more money than I knew what to do with, and it was getting fishy that we were still meeting in a basement, essentially. So I purchased a building to do operations from, a sanctuary, if you will. And I kept going and turned this into some kind of business, and it was completely illegal, way off the rails already. I was already way out of my league. I had no idea what I was doing. And then the first bit of good came out of this little venture. Now, one of the objectives I had on this list of ways to earn points was to start a food kitchen. You know, I had to throw things on the list that made it seem like a legit venture, and, well, wouldn't you know, a group of 5 people came together and they created the Penitence Points Episcopalian Pork Sausage and Pancake Food Kitchen. Yes, indeed, from the ground up, they found their own building. They ran it every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And they ran the points board for quite a while. Things were going well. As far as I could tell, I was earning money, people were coming, my sermons seemed to be getting some kind of result, some kind of good feedback. And during this period, I started to drink a bit of my own Kool-Aid. I began to think maybe this was a sign from above telling me I could actually turn my life around. And I began to believe what I was selling, and that's of course when the true nature of people that I was so counting on to give me the money showed its face. After the food kitchen had been put into place, I was starting to get some national attention. It was the perfect storm, you see. A novel idea for a church. A controversial novel idea for a church. In fact, one of the teachings in some Christian practices is that simply doing acts is not a way to get into heaven, and so it seemed like I was setting up a church that was incentivizing just that, and I was. So rightfully so, the way it is with religion, this got attention, and that combined with the food kitchen that had started in the community ended up earning us some national attention. And national attention led to a little bit of going viral. Nothing crazy, mind you, a couple 100,000 views, but it was enough to get people really coming in. And we upgraded buildings again. I was making way too much money. I even turned the thing down to only donating a quarter of your income. And it was still way too much money for me to hide, launder. I didn't have any kind of legitimate business license. If I had been audited, I would have been shut down before things got worse, so maybe that might have been a good idea. The thing started to go off. I'm getting off track. The thing started to go off the rails in subtle ways at first. The first time that my system was truly exploited, if you will, was the emergence of the Penitence Points Episcopalian Ponzi scheme. Turns out there was a loophole in the rules. You see, when those 5 people went to set up the soup kitchen, I had put a rule in allowing you to divvy up points between each other for people working together to do certain tasks. Seemed fair. Didn't see a problem with it at the time, but someone turned that rule into a Ponzi scheme of penitence points earning. Would hire people to do tasks to earn penitence points, and they would recruit people to earn penitence points for them, and so on and so on. Ponzi pyramid scheme. And they were able to divvy up those points down the hierarchy as follows. And, well, Bruce, I think that was the fellow who started it, and ended up being the one running the scoreboard for quite a while. And at this point, I was hiring people to keep the scoreboard in check because it was becoming a serious matter of contention, and people were having arguments and disputes about how many points they were getting. And then people found out about the Ponzi scheme and started bringing it to my attention. And this brought even more attention upon us. And by this point, penitence points were as good as a currency themselves, which led to the next bit of disaster. We went from the penitence points Ponzi scheme, which, while an exploit, was still legal. No one was gonna care about penitence points being conned for, and I even had some respect for it as a con man. But this next bit got a little bit dark. It was discovered that there was a dogfighting ring going on, and it was named the Penitence Points Episcopalian Premier League for Pugilistic Puppies. Turns out there was an exploit in the rules. I had set up a system where you were able to donate points from one person to another, and the idea had been something along the lines of someone with a lot of points could donate to someone with not so many points, and that would motivate the person with not so many points to step up and enact their role as someone that's high on the penitence points leaderboard and be a good person and all. And this became the basis for gambling with penitence points, since you were able to, with permission, exchange them freely as a currency. And this became quite the sport, and ultimately ended up in the dogfighting ring gambling setup of the Penitence Points Episcopalian Premier League for Pugilistic Puppies. Quite the nightmare, and it was at this point I was starting to get attention from the authorities, as this was illegal and it had the name on it, and they were going to snoop around. And like I said, I wasn't legit. I had no business license. I didn't know how I would pay taxes. I wasn't planning on paying taxes. I was way out of my league. But that wasn't the worst thing. The thing that ended us getting shut down was, well, when you start bringing in the debauchery of things like dogfighting, things can quickly get out, and what do you know, sex is the thing that brings us down. We started attracting less reputable sorts. Well, there was the trolls, people would try and get their names up on the leaderboard with something like Fart Sniffer 69 as a name, so they could put that up on a penitent, on a church board. Funny, but we had the real debauchery begin when it was discovered that there was a brothel involved. And this really all came down on my neck because they ended up slapping my name on the front of the bad boy, and it was called the Percy Perkins Penitence Points Episcopalian Penny for a Prostitute Pleasure Palace. I had to give them a little bit of credit. That is quite the name. But prostitution is still illegal, and it had serious ramifications. It turns out there was a loophole in the rules. I had set up a system in which you would earn points for giving away a good or service that you normally would charge full price for a penny. But the idea being you would give some kind of good service away to someone in need for quite cheap. I never imagined that this would end up resulting in the Percy Perkins Penitence Points Episcopalian Penny for a Prostitute Pleasure Palace. Never in my wildest dreams would I think that would result from that. But that is the nature of these things, and that is the nature of humans. And it ended up being the final straw. Police came in and audited the business, and it was found that I was a con man. I was arrested. I was charged with prostitution, but those charges didn't stick. This is getting into the weeds. That, my friends, is the story of the Penitence Points Episcopalian Church. My only brilliant idea, maybe the only one I'll ever think of, that went oh so right, but oh so very, very wrong.